Hey guys, it's Caitlin and welcome back to my channel. I'm finally getting back into consistent uploading on this channel because I have not been consistent at all, and I think that the last video that I posted was part 4 in my planning a novel series, but before that I had not posted in like 2 months. So I've been working so much on this final edit for What Lies Above and a bunch of other stuff in quarantine, and it just got crazy and I got completely off my posting schedule for YouTube. But I'm back and I'm going to be posting every Saturday and uploading new content for you guys, and I have a lot of request videos you guys want to see that you've been sending me in DMs or in stories over on my Instagram, and just a lot of different things that I have planned personally for you guys, stuff about indie publishing, formatting, and editing, and all kinds of things. So look forward to that. Subscribe if you're not subscribed because I'm finally getting back into my schedule and I will be having weekly content for you guys again, and I'm so excited to be back into the swing of things with YouTube because I have missed all of you guys. So hopefully you enjoy that, and again, subscribe if you are not subscribed so that you don't miss anything. Today we are going to be talking about how to apply feedback from critique partners and beta readers and author friends or whoever you're getting feedback from on your book, how to take that feedback and apply it to your edits. This is something that I actually talked about on my Instagram stories, I think last Saturday, I believe, and it was something that connected with you guys. You guys sent me some DMs, asked me to talk about some things, clarify, and go in more depth, and I didn't have a chance to go in as much depth as I wanted to on the story because I just didn't have the time, and those little Insta stories are so short that I couldn't talk about everything I wanted to, so I decided to just make this into a full-length YouTube video so that I could give you guys way more depth and detail about this process and give you guys some advice. I am right now, like I said, editing, and I have been taking all of my feedback and applying it to the manuscript, and so I've gone through this myself, not only with this round of betas, but with previous rounds and with previous books. So I've done this a few times, and while I'm by no means an expert, I definitely have picked up on some things that I want to share with y'all to hopefully make it a little bit easier on you guys when you're applying feedback to your edits. So first things first, let's talk about what the difference is between critique partner and beta feedback really quick. I'm not going to go into too much depth about this because I'm going to do a whole video on critique partners and beta readers, but I don't want you guys to be confused with those terms since I'm going to use them in the video a few times. So real quick, I'm going to give you a rundown on what critique partners are and beta readers, and then what the difference is between their feedback, because it will affect how you're going to apply that to your edits as you go into the manuscript to work on it. So critique partners are writers, and they are people that normally follow you throughout all of your books. It's not just one book that they're reading. Normally it's like an author friend that you find in all different ways, which I will talk about in the critique partner video, so that will be coming, so I'm not going to get into that right now. But they're people that you find that are in your corner, that are reading your work, you bounce ideas off of them, and they do read the manuscript, and they're looking at it with a more critical eye from a writer's standpoint. So they're looking at things like structure, things that a reader might not understand if they're not a writer, and so they're going to help you get really deep, breaking down the book and looking for developmental errors or structural problems, things that a writer would understand, and they're really, really, really important. So if you don't have critique partners, I highly recommend that you have them. My critique partners have been invaluable for What Lies Above. I didn't have any with my first book, but I had them with What Lies Above, and I'm still friends and I still talk with them today, and they're amazing. I love them so much. So if you don't have critique partners, I highly recommend that you try to find some. If you don't know how, I'm going to have a whole video on it, so I will definitely give you advice on how to find critique partners. Alright, then beta readers are readers, so they do not have to be writers. Sometimes they are, but they do not have to be, and in fact, if you can get readers that are not writers, it's actually going to be good because you're going to get it from purely a reader's standpoint and not that critical eye of the writer. Because even for me, whenever I'm reading a book just for fun, I still look at it with a writer's eye. It's almost impossible for me to not do that now because I've been writing for so long. So I always look at books still within the back of my mind, that writer's eye. So having a reader who is not a writer can be super beneficial because they're going to look at your book from purely a reader's standpoint, and you want that. But it's okay if they're also writers. But the point of beta readers is basically to give you feedback as if your book was already published, a reader was picking it up and reviewing it or reading the book, you know, for fun, for their own purposes. They're going to give you that feedback before it's published so that you can fix any of those things before it's out in the world and you're getting that feedback on a review. It is so much better for you to get some possibly negative feedback from a beta reader reader and fix it before you publish it than to have all of these reviews that might be like 2 stars with people all saying the same thing when it could have been something that you had fixed if you had beta readers tell you up front. Beta readers are going to tell you all kinds of things, and it's up to you as the author to ask them specific questions, but they're going to tell you things like what characters they connected to, were they bored during any part of the book, how were the plot twists, were they surprised, did they connect with these characters, was the setting good, did they understand, was there anything confusing or anything that needed clarifying, how was the world building. So they're going to look at stuff like a reader would, things that a reader would want to know. How are they going to react to the book whenever it's out in the world and they're reading and reviewing it? And I'm not going to talk about how to find beta readers because I will talk about that in my future beta reader video. However, I did get a request in a DM after I did my Insta story about this. Somebody asked me how many beta readers should you have, so I'm just going to answer that real quick and then I'll go into more detail in the full beta reader video. But I personally recommend that you have at minimum 5, but if you can get like 10 to 15, then that would be good. I've seen writers who have up to 15 or more beta readers. Personally, for me, 15 is getting on that higher end, and it can start to get overwhelming if you have too many. And I did mention this in my Insta story, so if you saw that, this might sound familiar. But if you have too many beta readers, it is just overwhelming. But if you have too few, then you're not going to be able to get breadth of like opinions, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute in the video. We're going to be looking for patterns, and I'm going to explain that here in a second. But you want to have enough beta readers that you can look for patterns across all readers instead of just a singular objective or subjective opinion. So when you're only listening to one person's feedback, that's their personal opinion, and everyone's personal opinion will be different. So the way that you fix that is by, or help that a little bit, is by getting more readers and starting to see if those things pop up multiple times across readers. So for me, with What Lies Above, I had, let me see, 7 or 8 beta readers, and then I think 7. I honestly can't remember right now because I did multiple rounds of beta readers, but I had, including beta readers and critique partners and agents that had looked at the book back whenever I was pursuing traditional publishing, I had at least 10 people giving me good feedback on the book. So for me, that was a good amount to be able to start seeing those patterns and to see feedback across all readers. But again, I would recommend at least 5 so that you can start to kind of see those patterns across beta readers. And if it sounds really stressful and overwhelming for you hearing, okay, how am I going to find 10 to 15 beta readers? That's a lot of people. Don't worry, again, I'm going to talk about it in my finding beta readers and my whole beta reader video, and I will go into depth on how you can find beta readers because it definitely can be stressful, especially if you don't really have a big platform, to try and find these people that will read your book basically for free and give you feedback, because it is a big commitment. So I will talk about that in the video. Don't stress, don't worry, that will be coming. Okay, so now we're getting into the meat of the video. We're really moving fast through this, so I'm sorry if I'm like overwhelming your brains, but there's a lot that I wanted to cover, and I don't want this video to be extremely long, so I'm trying to move very quickly through some of this information and give you as much in as little amount of time as I can. So let's jump into the biggest fear or concern or issue that I think a lot of authors and writers come up against whenever they are receiving their feedback from critique partners or beta readers, and then they are trying to apply it to their edits. And that is that authors and writers often want to take everything that they are receiving in their feedback and just apply it all, change everything in the manuscript. The reason for this oftentimes is that they are hoping that if they change everything, that they are going to please all readers. Their thought process is, well, if I apply all the feedback and I change everything that they're recommending that I change, I'm going to please everyone and everyone's going to love it, right? But the truth is that that's wrong. That's not ever going to happen. You are never going to please 100% of your readers. If you look at any of these books on the shelf behind me, and there's way more over there all around me also that aren't in the frame, any books at the library, any books at the bookstore, any book that has ever been written or published is never going to please 100% of its readers. Even hugely popular books like Hunger Games and Harry Potter and series like that have both 5-star reviews and reviews that aren't as glowing. People that love them and people that are not really fans. And that's just because everyone has different preferences and everyone connects to different books differently. And so what some people might love, some people just might not enjoy. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that your book is not strong or that your book is not well written. It just means that it didn't connect with that reader for whatever reason. Okay, so you might be wondering, well, if my goal isn't to please everyone and it isn't to make all readers happy and get 5-star reviews from everyone, then what is my goal? And I will tell you this, your goal is not to please all readers, it's to find patterns, which I mentioned earlier. So now we're going to start talking about what do I mean whenever I say find patterns. Okay, so I'm actually going to be talking about 4 steps to kind of break this all down for you guys. And we will talk about patterns, but I'm going to talk about one thing first, which is step one, and that is that before we can look for patterns, we need to digest the feedback that we have received. Basically, you're going to be taking all of the feedback, critique partner, beta reader, author friend, whatever, and you're going to be breaking it down or merging it, getting it into one space so that you can look at it all at once. There's a lot of ways that you can do this. You could go through the feedback and do like bullet points. You can break it down, Roman numerals, or one thing that I do, especially with my critique partner feedback, because my critique partners look at the manuscript and leave inline comments, and a few of my betas did that also, but most of them just answered the overall questions that I sent each week, which again, I'll talk about all of that in the critique partner and beta feedback videos and breaking it all down of my process and some recommendations. But with my critique partners, especially because they're leaving all those inline comments, it's really hard to look at a 300 or 400 page document from one critique partner with all these inline comments and then do that for all of my critique partners, which I have 3. So instead, I actually merged all 3 of those documents into one, and then I could see all 3 of my critique partners' comments, inline comments in one document, which was actually also really good because if there was a specific sentence or paragraph where all or several of my critique partners commented on that same passage, I could see all of their comments side by side, which was really, really nice. And if you don't know how to do that and you want that video, comment down below. You guys know the drill. Comment down below and let me know. I can also do a video on how to merge all of your documents into one. I do it in Microsoft Word so that you can see all of your inline comments from your critique partners or beta readers. So if you guys want to see that video, comment down below. Alright, so then once we have merged or written out and compiled all of our feedback and broken it down and digested it, step 2 is going to be to look for those patterns. This kind of goes back to what I was talking about with answering that question of how many beta readers that you should have, because those patterns, as I mentioned, are going to be more obvious whenever you look at it across multiple readers. If you only have 1 or 2 readers, it's impossible to see patterns because you're only going to be looking at 1 or 2 subjective opinions. And even if both of those readers say similar things, then it just might mean that those 2 readers are similar, which is also why, something I will talk about in the beta feedback video, is that you're going to want to find different readers, diverse readers, you know, of ages, genders, whatever, so that you can get more breadth, even more breadth of opinions as well. Because if you have the same exact demographic for all of your readers, they might all have similar opinions, even though everyone is going to have their own opinions, they just might be more similar. If you have all young adult readers, like all readers that are in their teens, versus if you have some adult readers and some young adult readers, some women and some men, etc. You just want to have diversity in the readers that you are having read your book. You also want to have diversity in ethnicity and in their interests, and especially whatever genre that you have, please get beta readers that are actually interested in that genre, because that can definitely sway their opinions. But I'm getting into all of that information that I'll talk about in that other video, but I just want to give you guys that advice to kind of try to vary up your readers so that you get even more of a breadth of opinion, but not so wide that it gets outside of your target audience. And for me, I did have a few readers that were more adults versus young adult, and even though I'm writing a young adult book, fun fact, actually a lot of people that read young adult are not young adults. A lot of adults read young adult books, and that is okay. If you are an adult and you're watching this video and people have ever told you or made fun of you for reading young adult books, do not listen to them, because young adult literature is awesome and I will read it forever also. So do not feel bad if you are an adult reading young adult books. But that's why I included a few adults as my readers also, because they are out there and they actually make up a really large percentage of the people that are buying YA literature. So I wanted to have an adult opinion as well, so I had some beta readers that were adults. So now let's theoretically say that you have 10 to 15 beta readers, or even if you have 5 to 10 beta readers, and they're all from, you know, a diverse amount of backgrounds and interests. Now what are you going to do? You have all of this feedback, and we're going to look for those patterns. Patterns are things that are just going to be popping up multiple times across readers. Things that you notice are not just one person's opinion. So for example, if multiple readers, and more than likely all readers are not going to say the same exact thing, but let's say that you have 10 beta readers and 5 or 6 of them are saying that your main character does not have enough agency, which was my biggest problem with my feedback. This was one of the biggest things that I had received about one of my main characters, Eva, was her lack of agency, and this is something that I had received a lot. Like, it was definitely a pattern across all readers. And so even though a few readers said, no, I like her exactly the way she is, I noticed that this opinion of her lacking agency was really prevalent, really prominent, and it was definitely a pattern across multiple readers. If you don't know what agency is with the character, it basically just means that the character is doing something in the book. They have a goal, they have a drive, they're going after something, and they're not just letting their world affect them. And so for my female point of view, Eva, she lacked agency because her world acts on her, but I needed her to also act on her world. And so I needed to fix her lack of agency by giving her more determination and drive, and by having her actually try to fix things in her world, even if it completely fell apart, which, spoiler alert, What Lies Above is basically just everyone's world falling apart around them. But it's also great, and so I hope you guys enjoy it. Also, just a newsflash for any of you guys who might read the book or follow me on my journey in the future and read any of my books, it is absolutely my greatest pleasure as an author to just really destroy my characters' lives and my readers' lives and make them cry. So sorry in advance, but not sorry. I still love you guys though. I still love you guys. All right, getting back to the video, talking about patterns. So that was for me an example of a pattern that appeared across multiple readers, was that my character lacked agency. So it was something that I absolutely focused on fixing in these edits. And I think hopefully that I did a good job of that, because I definitely took their feedback into consideration, and even some of my readers gave me specific advice on ways that they personally thought that I could give my character more agency because they had read the book and they'd seen opportunities where maybe she could have acted on the world instead of the world acting on her. So one of my followers did DM me after my Insta story about feedback and asked me a similar question with this, saying, how do you know what advice you should take and what advice that you shouldn't, and if there are contradictory opinions among readers, how do you decide whether you should take that advice or not? And their specific instance was that one of their beta readers or critique partners, that it wasn't specific, it just said reader, one of their readers said that they had too many adverbs in the story, and another reader said that it was fine, they didn't need to take out any adverbs. And so that kind of contradicts each other. One person saying, no, you need to take some out, and one person saying, no, it's fine just the way it is. What do you do in that situation? Now, I'm going to keep pointing you back to patterns because I think that this is so important, because here you have an instance where it's literally two people just contradicting each other. And so one person has one opinion, one person has the other. So that's why I mentioned that you don't want to just have one or two readers, because those two readers might end up contradicting each other and you're kind of back at square one. Like, what do? You have two opinions that are completely different. Whose opinion are you going to go with? But if you have, let's say, 5 or 10 readers, and out of the 10 readers you have 7 readers that say, oh no, the adverbs are fine, and then you have like 3 readers that say maybe you should take some out, even though that doesn't necessarily mean, okay, the 7 are completely right. It just means that more than likely that bigger audience, that bigger amount of the 10 is saying, no, I think it's okay. So it might just be that those 3, their personal opinion is that they think that you have too many adverbs. Maybe they're just the type of reader that doesn't like adverbs and they don't really want a lot in the book at all, so they're always going to think that you have too many, versus the 7, which outweighs that 3, saying, no, I think it's good. And I think that if you start getting into the statistics of everything and trying to do the math and say, okay, well, 7 said yes and 3 said no, so that means we should always go with the yes, that's going to get crazy and that's going to get overwhelming. And that's why I also said having too many readers is going to overwhelm you, because you're going to have so many opinions and so many people contradicting each other. So that's why you want that like good middle area where it's not too small and not too big. But ultimately, and I'm going to keep reiterating this as well, ultimately, whenever you have your feedback, you as the author are going to have to make these hard executive decisions of what stays and what goes, because ultimately it's your book and these are just readers whose opinions all change. So ultimately you are going to have to look at all of the feedback and decide, are you going to go with it or are you not? Because let's go back to that 7 and 3 example. Even if 7 people said, no, the adverbs are fine, you don't need to change them, and 3 people said, yes, there's too many, you as the author can say, okay, well, even though the 7 said, yes, you don't need to change them, you can still change it. I mean, you don't have to go with the majority of the feedback. It just can be helpful to look for patterns, because more than likely if more readers are saying it, it might be a little more true. Now, one recommendation that I would give you guys whenever you're working with beta readers is to have beta questions, because this can really target your readers' opinions and perspectives on a specific issue if you're worried about it in your book. I did this with What Lies Above because there were a few few things. For example, my main character's agency, which I talked about earlier, that I had already heard from my critique partners and previous readers, and so I wanted feedback on it from my betas, and I knew that if I didn't give them targeted beta questions and I just left it open-ended where they would just read the book and give me a beta letter at the end with their feedback, they might not address that issue. They might just give me their overall feedback, kind of like a review on Goodreads or Amazon, and I wanted targeted responses about specific things in the book because, again, the point of having beta readers for me was to be able to find the weak points in the book and fix them. So if I thought that a part might have been weak, I had a specific question in my beta letter or in my beta questions, which I sent out weekly. And I am going to talk in my beta video in the future all about how to work with betas and how to send questions and how often to send them and how to break down your book. So I will talk about that. But personally, I sent out weekly questions with the chapters, and there were specific questions that were about topics in that chapter that I thought might have been weak, and so I wanted every single reader's opinion on it. For example, talking about my main character's agency. Okay, so I might say in this chapter or in this set of chapters, do you think that she had agency? Do you think that she had a goal? Do you think that she was acting on her world? Or I might have said, how do you think that she interacted with this character? There was a lot of things that I was really targeting in this particular round of beta edits, and so I made sure to include all of those topics and those concerns in the form of questions so that I could look at those patterns across all of my readers in a very targeted way versus just relying on the hope that they were all going to tell me their feedback on an issue, because more than likely, if you don't ask them a specific question, how are they supposed to know what you're looking for? So put it in a question, make it targeted, and that way you have a specific answer from all of your readers on their opinion. If you're worried that you have too many adverbs, just ask a question. In this set of chapters, do you think that there was too many adverbs? And then they're going to tell you yes or no, and their feedback, and then you're going to have that pattern across all of your readers. So having targeted beta questions can definitely help you with these patterns and with getting all of these answers across all of your readers. All right, so step 1 was to digest all of your feedback. Step 2 was to look for patterns, and now we're going to talk about step 3, which is to sort your feedback into 3 different categories. The first category is the feedback that you are absolutely not taking into consideration. This could happen for any myriad of reasons, but I'm going to give you an example from What Lies Above to kind of show you why you might not take that feedback into consideration at all. One of the things that I noticed from 1 or 2 readers with the What Lies Above edit, and it wasn't something that was huge, but it's just something that I did notice, was that a reader might say that something doesn't make sense because an answer is not immediately given. So their question might be asked or a plot hole might exist. To them, it's going to look like a plot hole, and to them, it's going to look like an unanswered question. It's going to look like something that doesn't make sense, when in fact, it's purposeful suspense or purposeful plotting on my part where I want it to be open-ended, because eventually it's going to be answered either later in the book or later in the series, and so I don't immediately give that answer. So to the reader, it might appear like it's a plot hole or something that needs to be fixed, when in fact you already know you're in control of it because it's purposeful on the part of the author. So for me, I looked at that feedback and I knew that, okay, that's their opinion. They think that it doesn't make sense. They think that it needs to be fixed, when in fact I already knew that. I already planned for that. So I'm not going to take that feedback into consideration. All right, and then the second category is, I don't really like this feedback, but I'm going to possibly take it into consideration. And I personally think that this is the hardest one, because this is that feedback that might bruise you a little bit. It might hurt a little bit, sting a little bit, or it might require a lot of work. And so initially your immediate reaction is, no, like, I'm not doing this. I don't want to change this. I don't want to fix this or cut this character or add this point of view or change the tense or change, whether it's first person or third person, because that one takes so much work. If you get a reader or multiple readers that are saying, hey, I really think that your third person story should be changed into first person, and that one might hurt because that's going to take a lot of work. But sometimes that feedback that really hurts, and that in your heart you're like, I do not want to do this, sometimes it might strengthen your story. So this is that category where even if you might not want to do it, you want to put it to the side, tuck it away, because you might want to change it. You might want to take that into consideration and actually do it. I've had this happen not only from reader feedback, but my own personal opinion when I'm looking at the book and editing, and I realize hey, something needs to be changed here and it's going to take a lot of work and I really don't want to do it, but in the end it made all the difference. Fun fact, what lies above was actually initially just a single point of view from my female character Eva, and I actually added an entire second point of view, Eli, which is my male point of view, and I did that after I had already written and queried the entire book. So I added pretty much an entire new story to the plot line, and let me tell you guys, it took forever and it took so much effort, but I cannot even believe that the story did not have Eli as a point of view at one point. He is so integral to the story at this point, and his story is just adds so much to the book. Okay, and then the third category is the things that you are definitely changing. This is something that appears across multiple readers or all of them, and it's something that you know, obviously, yes, you need to change for whatever the reason. I can't really think of an example off the top of my head, but it's something that you as the author just know, yeah, okay, that needs to be changed. Now, you might be wondering, how do I decide which of these categories the feedback goes in? Yes, I'm definitely changing it. No, I'm definitely not changing it. Or I don't really want to change it, but maybe I should. And unfortunately, the answer to this is that there is no magical answer. You as the author are going to have to decide in your heart, looking at the feedback, and I know that it can be hard because again, your heart will get in the way, especially if it's something that hurts or something that will require a lot of work. It might sway your opinion, but you're really going to have to step back, look at those patterns, look at the feedback across all readers, and decide, do I want to take this feedback into consideration and do it, or do I not? Because at the end of the day, you can look at all of the videos that you want and look up the answers on the internet and read articles by people and ask questions of authors and try to get someone else to tell you whether you should or should not change something. But at the end of the day, you're the author and you're going to have to decide what you do and do not want to put into your book and what kind of product you want to have at the end. What story do you want to tell and what do you want it to look like at the end? And so ultimately, as the author, you're the one that has to make that ultimate decision of what is going to go in, what's going to come out, what's going to stay, and what's going to change. What I want to say at the end of all of this is that the goal with editing is not to save yourself effort or work. The goal is to bring the book to the strongest, most polished place that it can possibly be before you publish it. And so that's so hard because sometimes, especially if you've been working on a book for a long time, the last thing that you want is to have to put more hours and more work and more stress and tears into editing it again. I have edited What Lies Above more times than I can count, you guys, and sometimes there were definitely times where I just wanted to give up because I was so tired. I would rather just throw it out in the world the way it was than continue to edit it. But I know now that after all of this work and after all the things and all the years that the book is so much stronger. So I just want to encourage you all that you shouldn't be trying to save yourself effort. You should be trying to polish the book as much as you can. So that's why that middle category of I don't really want to do it, but maybe I should is so important, because sometimes we have to do hard work and do work we don't want to do in order to make our book shine to the best that it possibly can. Ultimately, as the author, you know the story best though, and so you are going to have to make decisions, like I said, about what to change and what to not change. One of my friends once described it as chew on the meat and spit out the bones, and what she meant by this is you're going to take the stuff that is applicable and the stuff that you think should be changed, chew on it, change it, apply it to your book, spit out the bones, spit out the things that you don't think that you need to change. And so as the author, you're going to have to decide what is meat and what is bones. In other words, what is constructive, helpful feedback that's going to strengthen your book, and what is just personal, subjective opinion that you're always going to have. Even if you go with that subjective opinion, you're going to have someone else's subjective opinion that might completely contradict that. So again, you're not just trying to please every reader, you're trying to look at patterns to find overall what is going to strengthen the book. And one final example for you all before I close out this very long and very, very detailed video, which, side note, if you are feeling overwhelmed, I did throw a lot of information at you. So I'm not sorry, because hopefully this will help, but I want to say if you are feeling overwhelmed right now, it's okay. It might take a little while to digest all of this because I really did give you a lot. I feel like this video is probably at least 30 minutes. So if you stuck with me to the end, thank you so much. I hope that it has been helpful. But I want to give you one last example before we go. with this edit that I have been doing now and the beta feedback that I got from this final round of feedback before I started editing for the final time, one of the betas said that they did not like Eli, which is my male point of view, because he is a morally gray character, which he is. I will admit that very openly. He's a morally gray character, and so the reader said that they didn't like him because it seemed like he was going towards the dark side and there was not any light, and so they stopped connecting with him because he almost seemed like he was becoming bad whenever they wanted to root for a good character. Whereas another reader said that they loved his moral grayness and they wanted to see a redemptive arc for him across the series, and they didn't want him to change at all. So as the author, I had to decide, whose opinion am I going to go with? Am I going to go with the person that says I should change him or the person who says I shouldn't? And ultimately, I didn't go with either of their opinions. I went with my opinion. Because as the author, I love Eli the way he is. I love his arc, and I know where I'm taking him across the whole series because I can see that, whereas my readers can't. And so I stuck with my gut, and I stuck with what I wanted for the story and for Eli, and so I didn't change it. Sometimes feedback can hurt really, really deeply, but as authors, we have to put aside that moment of hurt or that day or week of hurt, and we have to move past that to be able to try and look at feedback with as much of an objective brain as we can, because that writer brain and that heart is going to want to, be in there whenever we get feedback. It can hurt us whenever we receive criticism, but criticism is so important for strengthening the book. So try to move past that hurt to be able to look at it from an objective standpoint and apply it to your book to hopefully strengthen it. And then finally, step 4 is to obviously apply the edits that you have decided to make and to polish the book so that it can shine. And there you go. Those are my 4 steps for how to take feedback that you have gotten and apply it to edits. And again, I know that this was a lot, so if you made it to the end, thank you so much. I hope it was helpful. If it was, give this video a thumbs up, and I hope that I answered the questions that you all sent me in the DMs. I kind of sprinkled them throughout, so hopefully I answered all of those questions. Also, I'm always taking requests for videos, so if there is anything you want me to talk about in a future video, you can also leave that in a comment, and visit all of my social media. I always link it in the description box if you want to catch up with me. I'm especially active on Instagram, very active on Instagram, and I post a lot of updates and advice and Bookstagram photos, so if you want, check that out. My handle is author Caitlin Lambert. That is all for today, you guys. I hope that this was helpful, and I hope I was able to expound on what I was talking about in my story. And if you are in the editing trenches right now, do not lose heart, do not get discouraged. I know personally it can be very discouraging to edit and to receive feedback, but I'm encouraging you right now. It's part of the author journey, and it's going to make you stronger. It's going to make you a better writer, so press on for the sake of the story that you want to tell. I will catch you guys in my next video. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you have a wonderful week. I will see you next Saturday. Bye!